My name is Juan Gonzalez. I'm here representing the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, a nonprofit organization with more than 2,000 members who work in television, radio, and newspapers in the United States in both English and Spanish language media. I'm a founder and former president of the association, a staff columnist for the New York Daily News, and a co-host of the national radio program Democracy Now! In nearly 30 years as a professional journalist, I have never testified before any government body on any issue. But I and the members of my association are here today to plead for your help because the profession that we love and the media industry in which we labor has repeatedly and profoundly failed the public interest, convenience, or necessity of a huge portion of our population, the approximately 100 million Americans of African, Hispanic, Asian, and Native descent. Even as our nation has become ever more diverse racially and ethnically, we all know as much as 35% of our population, 35% of the population now is minority. Minority ownership of the broadcast companies that provide the public essential news reports and interpretations of daily events has remained at shockingly low levels. The Free Press report released last week found the percentage of minority-owned stations declined from an already paltry 3.45% in 2006 to 3.1%. And that among African Americans, it plummeted from 25 stations in 1998 to 19 in 2006 to 8 in 2007. Black ownership of television stations in America is disappearing. Since 1998, even though the total number of commercial television stations has increased by about 13%, the number of minority-owned stations has stagnated. And radio is hardly much better. A 2006 study by Free Press concluded that minorities own just 8% of the 10,000 commercial radio stations in the country. In contrast, overall minority ownership in the general non-farm sector of business in America reached nearly 18% in 2002, the last year for which we have comprehensive government data. That's 5 times better than television and twice the level of radio. Chairman Martin's plan to permit expanded cross-ownership by newspapers and television stations places the future of minority ownership in even greater jeopardy. Under the chairman's plan, all 19 minority-owned television stations operating in the top 20 markets would become potential targets for purchase by local newspapers. Some might ask why we as journalists place so much emphasis on the racial and ethnic composition of media owners. It's simple. Direct experience has shown us that ownership matters when it comes to diversity in newsroom employment, and more importantly, when it comes to a diversity of voices and meeting the news and information needs of minority communities. Not surprisingly, the percentage of journalists of color working at local TV stations and at daily newspapers also declined last year, and minority employment in both local broadcasting and newspapers continues to lag behind overall population. For 11 years, our association has issued annual reports on the coverage of Hispanics by the evening news broadcasts of the major television networks. Year in and year out, the results are inevitably the same. Less than 1% of network news has been devoted to stories that specifically focus on Hispanics. Depending on that year, anywhere from 30 to 45% of that small universe of stories has centered on 2 main issues: immigration and crime. A more marginalized and distorted image of the Latino population in America could not be imagined. In 2001, NBC spent $1.9 billion to buy a bunch of local Telemundo stations. At the time, NBC executives personally assured me as president of the association and the FCC that the merger was in the public interest and would provide more resources and news to the Hispanic community. After gaining regulatory approval, merging its back office operations in 2006, NBC laid off 700 workers and announced that it was eliminating local news staffs at Telemundo stations in 5 of the nation's biggest cities: San Diego, Phoenix, Houston, San Antonio, Denver, and consolidating them in a regional newscast, in a regional local newscast in Dallas. Only in the Orwellian world of our major media broadcast companies can you improve local news coverage by eliminating it in local cities and piping it in from 1,000 miles away. So I think that previous studies, FCC studies, have confirmed a direct nexus between minority ownership, workforce diversity, and the content of news. NHJ, more than 20 civil rights...
Mr. Gonzalez, please summarize.
Yes, have called on the FCC to address minority ownership, and I'd just like to say that Next year represents the 200th anniversary of the Hispanic press in America and of the black press 180 years ago, and we're still fighting those fights to require adequate representation of the concerns of the minority community. Now, we urge the committee to please stop these proposals of Chairman Markey until full understanding of the implications for minority media is resolved. Thank you, sir.